previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, was released from Soviet imprisonment in 1927. Here we'll give the background, making us understand why we celebrate this each year with renewed enthusiasm. Years ago, Marx's socialism and Lenin's communism started a new era for humanity. Its seemingly endless power and brutality seemed unreachable. Yet one man stood up, a man who would not allow the awesome propaganda machine of Mother Russia to blur his vision, to eclipse his clarity. He knew with full conviction that evil might prevail, but only for a limited time. Yet godliness, embodied in Torah and mitzvahs, are eternal, and it chooses to invest in eternity. But it sure seemed like a lost battle. Here was an individual rabbi with a small group of followers, staging an underground rebellion against a mighty empire that numbered in the hundreds of millions and aspired to dominate the world. The situation seemed hopeless. In 1927, he was arrested and sentenced to death by a firing squad. Foreign pressure and nothing less than a miracle convinced the KGB to alter their sentence to 10 years in exile. It was then converted to 3 years, and then, quite unbelievable, in the Soviet regime, where people were murdered like flies, he was completely exonerated. The 12th day of the Hebrew month of Tammuz marks the anniversary of the day he was liberated from Stalin's death sentence and imprisonment. We find that the Lubavitcher Rebbe was considered a most important factor by the top level of the communist regime. The following story illustrates this. Rabbi Handel Lieberman, the well-known Lubavitcher painter, participated in World War II, serving in the Russian army. He was given very important assignments, acting as a vital link with the Russian partisans, fighting behind the German lines, causing much damage to the German forces. Once he was brought to the Soviet General Staff, where all the military activities were planned. This place was protected by extreme security measures, but Reb Handel was of such importance that he was allowed to enter this place. While waiting for a conference with high-ranking officers, he was brought into a certain room. The room was well furnished with expensive furniture and carpets. On one of the walls there were 3 paintings that attracted his special attention. They were portraits of personalities whom he knew very well. Reb Handel was astounded by the expert execution of these 3 portraits. The artist who had painted them was obviously one of the best painters in the entire Soviet Union. Reb Handel, himself an artist, stood a long time in front of these paintings, studying the technique and admiring the excellent work. Suddenly he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned around and saw a Russian general standing behind him. The general told him, "I see that you take an interest in these people," and started to explain to Reb Handel, "These three people are the biggest enemies of the Soviet Union." The man on the left side is Trotsky. His name was previously labeled Davidovich Bronstein. The man on the middle picture is Nikolai Bukharin. He was also Jewish. He was editor of the Pravda for 11 years.
A year and a half later, Stalin eliminated another former comrade, Nikolai Bukharin, the prominent Marxist theorist whom Lenin once described as the favorite of the party. The trial of Nikolai Bukharin and 20 others began in March of 1938. As in the other show trials, the prosecution was led by Vyshinsky, who represented the state and Stalin. This trial, which shocked the world, was extensively filmed.
Exactly 1 year ago, Comrade Stalin analyzed deficiencies in our work and arrived at the conclusion that the Trotskyite hypocrites must be liquidated. This direction he outlined in an article he wrote in which he stated 2 words on the deviants, saboteurs, spies and others: Trotskyites and Bukharinites, your honor, this whole right-wing Trotskyite and cities who wants to contribute to the defeat of their own country. It is clear that these so-called masters must be mercilessly crushed. Bukharin is also telling now lies before the court. Bukharin knew of the plan to arrest Lenin, Stalin and Sverdlov, and who knew of such a plan would also have carried it out. Who is prepared to use force is also prepared to commit murder. Bukharin, Nikolai Ivanovich, Rykov, Alexei Ivanovich, Yagura, Heinrich Grigorievich are sentenced to the highest punishment, to be executed by firing squad, their entire property to be confiscated.
The man on the third picture is Rabbi Schneerson of Lubavitch. Thus, 15 years after the Lubavitcher Rebbe had left Russia, he was still dreaded by the communist regime. But now, 80 years later, this giant and what he represented have emerged victorious. Today, in the republics of the former Soviet Union, stand hundreds of synagogues, Jewish day schools, yeshivot, mikvaot, and Jewish community centers. On Hanukkah, a large menorah stands tall in the Kremlin, casting the glow of Hanukkah on the grounds where Stalin walked with Beria and Yezhov. Comrade Stalin is dead. Communism has faded away as hopelessly irrelevant and destructive. The sun of the nation is today a cloud of darkness. Every year, on the 12th day of Tammuz, you will find tens of thousands of Jews all over the world celebrating the liberation of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1927 and the narrative of one man's triumph over one of the greatest mass murderers in human history, sharing his vision, committing themselves to continue his labor of saturating the world with the light of Torah and mitzvahs.
Befen de meeste we heilig we ewi, die dan notzach, heilig we kewi, besimcha of tule wov, l'chaim.